Got an important and information-packed episode today for people who like these videos where I'm walking around and talking and showing everybody what's going on in New York City on the High Line or whatever, and hearing important information really that I don't hear anybody else talking about. You're gonna like this. I think everybody knows by now the Director of National Intelligence, the Director of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, she basically declassified information explaining that former President Barack Obama was behind the Russiagate hoax. Now, I think a lot of people feel like, see, we already knew that, so that's good that you're, bringing it to the fore. And obviously somebody like me or name your person talking about it, it's quite different than somebody like the Director of National Intelligence doing it. Particularly, she said that she's declassified these documents and she's referred them to the Department of Justice for, has she used the word prosecution? Everybody's asking her if it's going to be prosecution. She's saying, to hold people accountable. It is very hot today. You can see people dumping water on each other and everything. It's a hot day on the High Line. I do like it up here. It's a very New York City park to me, in some ways even more so than Central Park, because there's places you can go in Central Park, and people love this about it, where you would forget that you're in New York City. That's one of the great things about it. But with the High Line, you cannot forget that you're in New York City. It's literally a park stuck in the middle of the city, and we have all these, like hip and trendy apartment buildings all around it. For people who maybe are seeing the show for the first time, this used to be an elevated, the subway, I think, or I don't know, Charles knows more about the history of this. I think it had something to do with shipping. We got the water right over there. Hudson River, Hudson Yards, of course. But this is the High Line. And what we need to talk about is, when I say the real Russiagate declassification and how to spot a limited hangout, I'm not suggesting that Tulsi Gabbard is a limited hangout. I'm saying that previous declassifications that have been related to Russiagate, specifically Devin Nunes, that was a limited hangout. And there's people who are going to say, oh, screw this guy, clickbait, jackass, I like Devin Nunes, I don't like Jason. That's fine, you can say that. I don't make these assertions, these allegations. I don't just look at Devin Nunes and decide I don't like him, or see some of his old tweets or whatever and decide I don't like him. Same kind of thing with other limited hangouts. We're going to talk about a few today. George Webb, Mike Benz. Oh, I like Mike Benz. Jason's an idiot. Mike Benz was a lawyer and he worked for the State Department. Who are you to say he's a limited hangout? Well, I mean, look, again, I don't just come out and say these things. It's not like I look at these guys and just holding a finger up to the air and making a guess, as so many people do. By the way, you see the sponsorship links down there at the bottom. It's difficult, I appreciate this, for people to sponsor on Odyssey. Now they've gone to cryptocurrency. You know why that happened? Because I was in communication with Odyssey. They were staunchly resistant to the censorship that was happening. The credit card processing company that they used, Stripe, wanted them to implement certain content to do that, and so they lost their ability to process credit cards, and you can only sponsor on Odyssey through the AR cryptocurrency. And I'm not endorsing or criticizing that. I'm just letting people know. Lots of folks have contacted me saying they don't want to use it. I appreciate that, and I appreciate everybody who has sponsored over the years on Odyssey. Thank you so much. It was a big blow to my income to suddenly lose all of those sponsors. It's not really the way things normally worked. When I switched, to suddenly lose all of those sponsors. It's not of making 3D motion picture content to making YouTube videos. Part of the reason I wanted to do it was I got very jammed up in that other business when an international client decided they didn't want to pay me of making 3D motion picture content to making YouTube videos. Part of the reason I wanted to do it was I got very jammed up in that other business when an international client decided they didn't want to pay me almost $250,000. I decided then that rather than having one client owe me $250,000, I'd rather have 250,000 clients each owing me $1, because just like cryptocurrency and blockchain things, it distributes. It's less likely for the whole thing to collapse. But see, there are persistent threats to my ongoing business health. Persistent threats, that's what cybersecurity people call threat actors. These are all terms. But anyway, there are persistent threats to the economic health of Crowdsource the Truth, and they want to shut down things that make it possible for me to bring everybody this kind of information without being content moderated, and Odyssey is one of them. So if you're inclined to use cryptocurrency, I do encourage you to stay with Odyssey, but if you're not, darn. Man, why did that happen? And we waited a long time. It's always stuff. Complicated invest time. Matter is limited buffer. Yeah, exactly, DW. I've walked many. Do they have? Is it bad? I bet. Jack from I'm trying. Going to be put show. I don't know. Could have signal. I want to talk. A lot of people have thought Donald Trump thinks this. Yeah, it doesn't. People are so many to the chat. What I'm helping here. I'm concerned at Hangout. I can see here. Makes no sense to me. Okay, you're I've been annoyed. Discuss this about all limited He likes to get paid, criticize. I'm not jealous, I just find it get supported by tons of money on living at it. Teams spend their time giving me frustrating comments and telling me what to do. So let's talk about what Tulsi Gabbard just declassified, okay? Everybody saw, I think, she went on to X, on Twitter, whatever you want to call that, and she's talking about the creation of the Russia hoax. She gives us this timeline here, you know, December 8th, this and that happens. And she gets to, see, this is the thing that's important about this is that she's talking about what was going on after the election, okay? The Christopher Steele dossier, it was really only doing anything during the election. It was after the election that Obama leaned on his allies in the media. Who is she talking about? Who is she talking about? Allies in the media. Yeah, it's going in and out. I see. Okay, so PK unwatchable, so fuck off and don't watch. You're going away. Pain in the ass. Stupid asshole telling me stuff like that. The point of the matter is they're leaning on their friends in the media, she's saying. Whatever it is, maybe she did declassify, but this thing here, this is the January 6th document, the intelligence community assessment, the background to assessing Russian activity, interference. This is the January 6th document that she's talking about, okay? And in it, they're saying we assess that Russia attempted to assist Donald Trump, blah, 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 to, you know, smear Hillary and help Donald Trump. What does he say right here? We assess Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered an influence campaign. He ordered it, aimed at the U.S. presidential election. Russia's goals were to undermine public faith in the democratic process. I mean, that's basically describing exactly what they are doing by doing this. See that? Better video on Odyssey. Well, I'm sorry that it's constantly freezing, everybody. What I'm gonna do if it's constantly freezing is I'm gonna put it out after the fact. But jamming up the chat with comments like that helps nobody, including me. There's nothing I can do about it right now. InfoWars. Yeah, I mean, it could be that they're doing something to thwart me and telling me about it. There's nothing I can do. Okay? So the point is, we have this January 6th intelligence community assessment, which says, oh, like a pizza, Russia ordered this operation to undermine people's confidence in the democratic process. In actual fact, it's Barack Obama who ordered this intelligence operation, counterintelligence operation, whatever you want to call it. But this is what I have been talking about for 8 years. I've been saying that George Webb and his brother and others, not that they're the masterminds, they are pawns in a game. I'm saying they're the ones that were sent to interface with me. And why do I say that? It's not because I got into some internet beef with George. Some people say, oh, you're jealous, you know, and George will tell you, oh, Jason built his whole channel based on me and he owes me money or something like that. Okay, now it's back. Thank you, Jeff. So let's enjoy this. And for people who are watching now, I'll post a full unadulterated version of this after the fact, depending on, you know, how it goes. Put it on there for sponsors. Please sponsor the show, is the point. Whatever it is that's trying to prevent this information from getting to you, it just helps a lot if people sponsor the show on Subscribestar, Patreon, Substack, even on X there. Okay? So when I say that George played a role, remember back to when I first started doing videos. And if you weren't watching then, let me fill you in. This was the beginning of 2017, right when all of this was underway. And I met George and said, hey, let's do videos together. And he was like, okay, one of the first people we should interview in New York is Charles Ortel. And I said, fine, I've seen Charles Ortel on Lionel's show. Interesting guy, lots to say about the Clinton Foundation, expert in financial, everybody knows Charles. And I said, yeah, good. Trish Negron, Trish the Dish, another very questionable person who seems to have disappeared. You know what's interesting is that years ago, before this war between Israel and Palestine started, years before October 7th, I observed that Trish had taken to wearing all kinds of Free Palestine clothing and interviewing Timothy Holmseth. Not that he has anything to do with Palestine, but he's another Stephen Biss client. And what happened? What came out of my interaction with George? Well, I started getting sued by Robert David Steele, who was represented by Stephen Biss, and then subsequently George's brother. I think that wasn't their original plan. Robert David Steele even said that their original plan was for Manny to be out front. He was talking about Manuel Chavez, right? They wanted him to be suing me, not because the individual Manuel Chavez has any particular importance in this. He's just, again, a pawn, a stand-in figure. They just wanted lots of lawsuits on me, and to effectuate lawsuits, you need a plaintiff. So he was the insert. A cutout, you might even say. A Lawfare cutout is what Manuel Chavez was. And I don't know really what happened with Manuel Chavez, but in my opinion, wisely, he chose to disengage. I don't deal with him anymore, and I prefer it that way. But the point is, I was getting sued by Robert David Steele, and I think they anticipated they'd bring this $16 million lawsuit against me, and I would hire an attorney and go broke, or settle the lawsuit with them for some amount of money that would curb my appetite for doing these kind of broadcasts, and that I would go away. That was clearly their intention. It was a ridiculous lawsuit that obviously ultimately failed. And I didn't have any money at the time, and also just didn't, I knew it was an idiotic lawsuit. I wasn't about to go out and hire an attorney. So that was where I started cutting my teeth as a pro se. And when that didn't work, a year later, then George's jackass brother started suing me. And that's something that he's been doing for a long time. This lawfare process is not new. George's brother has been bringing frivolous lawsuits against all kinds of government contracting companies and individuals who own technology companies since like 1992. It's difficult to understand why he's allowed to continue to move in court, because they do have rules and statutes that are intended to prevent vexatious litigation, but none of that has been applied to George's brother. It's strange that after I sued Ben Wittes one time, they applied that type of injunction to me. I'm not allowed to bring any more lawsuits against Ben Wittes. I'm not allowed to bring any more lawsuits against Nina Jankowicz in any U.S. District Court without first seeking leave of the court. There's a few other people on that list, but it's interesting. It's just very interesting to observe. A court decided that, not somebody on YouTube, not some Twitter account. A court decided that. And it's important to remember, Benjamin Wittes, I don't know if he is right now, but at various times in the recent past, he has been the director of the nonprofit Lawfare Institute, which is a related entity, I believe is the technical terminology, to the Brookings Institution. And that's like a $500 million think tank. Now, the one thing that Mike Benz says that I agree with is that at a certain time, maybe in the 80s, maybe earlier, the CIA itself decentralized. They realized, hey, wait a minute, Jimmy Carter can come in here with Stansfield Turner, and we can have the church committee hearings and everything, and that can limit the CIA's ability to get funding and do stuff. So we can't have that. We need, other streams of revenue, and we don't like paying taxes and want to have a lot of opaque kind of structures for how to do this. So nonprofit organizations seem really good. I don't know exactly how Charles got onto the Clinton Foundation, but he was really the first person to bring these nonprofit issues to my attention, and I didn't know initially. You shouldn't be riding a bicycle on the sidewalk. You're old enough to know better. Stupid bitch. Dumb old lady. Charles didn't initially say, oh, the Clinton Foundation is a cutout for the CIA and financing the CIA. And I haven't proven that in court. That's an allegation, a suspicion. I think that's what it is. I think that's a lot of what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. Yeah, Brian, RDS is allegedly still dead. I don't think he's dead. Yes, I'm in NYC. And anyway, it just seems quite clear that this vast network of nonprofit organizations is a mechanism for funneling money to these clandestine operations. And by the way, even if it's not the CIA behind every single one of them, there's going to be people who can observe that and realize that these things aren't adequately regulated, nobody's really looking at them, and just create their own nonprofit and siphon money from it in the same way that the Clintons and the CIA and whoever else obviously does. Robert David Steele, remember, had a nonprofit organization, and throughout the course of that lawsuit, these people are waiting for gelato. Throughout the course of that lawsuit, certain things came out, and even just from looking at his publicly filed 990s, you can see that he's paid people. Remember that Bombard's Body Language, who did a video criticizing my interview with, what was that guy's name? The Marine, Andre Taggart. That was the guy who moved into a house that was owned by Imran Awan, and Taggart, he found somebody got mail? He found the Blackberries that had been smashed by Imran. And remember, George was all over that story. So this is part of the limited hangout. You're going to say, oh no, you stole that story from George, or blah, blah, blah. I didn't steal anything from George. I was watching George on YouTube. I said, hey, this guy's onto something. It's interesting. And, when he and I stopped working together, I continued investigating some of the same stories. I wanted to investigate more about Andre Taggart because I had certain suspicions about what George was saying. He would do weird things. Remember when, what was her name? Oh my God, I'm so sorry. That woman who rented the house from Imran Awan, what was her name? It's been years since I've spoken to her, but we started communicating with her. And she told me things about the shed, that Imran had a lock on the shed and air conditioning in the shed, and she was worried about the electric bill. Does anybody remember her name? And she, he freaked out about the shed. And through investigating and talking with her, we found out that there seemed to be an internet connection going into the shed. And what's on the other side of an internet connection other than a server or a client, some sort of a computer, sending or receiving information? And as soon as we said that, George went to the house and tried to misdirect people to a different shed to try to establish some false evidence that would make what I was saying impossible to be correct. Why would he do that? That's a limited hangout, right? He's telling you enough that you'll trust him. And it's not just about telling you enough that you'll trust him. A limited hangout is generally employed when there's information out that is dangerous to the person that wants to cover the information up. The term, again, it comes from Richard Nixon's mouth. He was telling his cabinet, his lawyers and all those guys, who was it, Haldeman and John Dean and all of those guys, he was saying, He was upset that the Brookings Institution, Daniel Ellsberg, was publishing the Pentagon Papers and putting out all this stuff about the Vietnam War. And Nixon said, I'm not happy about all this information hanging out. And so the cabinet dudes suggested, well, why don't we, we'll focus on this, we'll talk about this, and we'll admit to this one thing and sort of deflect everybody from the really bad information. And Nixon said, oh, you mean like a limited hangout? So that's what it is about getting all over the dangerous story. It's not just this 80-20 or 90-10 where somebody tells you a little bit of, false information mixed in with the truth. Yes, that's a component of it, but it's an incredibly calculated, highly strategic focus. It could be 99.9% true and one critical detail false to throw you off. Like I was watching this interview, Tucker Carlson with Daryl Cooper, I think the guy's name is. I don't know anything about Daryl Cooper. That's the first time I ever saw him. But they made an allegation about Whitney Webb, saying that she had stolen her information from somebody. And I hadn't seen Whitney Webb in a while, but right away after watching that interview, I was even thinking to myself, where is Whitney Webb? Isn't she all over this Epstein story? Then I saw a tweet from her. She apparently just had a baby, so that makes sense that she wouldn't be around so much. And she was saying, hey, this is false, Tucker Carlson. I didn't steal the information from Ryan. I forget who they said she stole it from, but I don't know what the answer to that is. But if the whole point of that interview is to discredit Whitney Webb, there's a lot of people now who are going to see Tucker Carlson, and just by virtue of the fact that he says it's fake, they will think that. So that's the deal. They want to have, this is a pottery studio coming soon, clay. See, there's a lot of this kind of thing happening now in New York. This got to be expensive as hell to rent this. This would normally be some kind of very expensive retail place, but now it's pottery classes. Strange. That's the changing landscape of New York City post-COVID. But back to the limited hangout. I mean, I don't know what was said in that interview that's true or not true. A lot of it sounded true to me. A lot of it I have no way of, verifying or refuting. But that's the purpose of a limited hangout. And so when George goes over to Imran Awan's house, Laurel, what was her name? What was that woman's name? Laurel, I forget her name. But when he went over to the house, he was like, oh, no, we don't want Jason to reveal that there was a server in there. So meanwhile, everybody thinks George is exposing Imran Awan this whole time, when what he's doing is he's getting all over that story so that he's perceived as the smartest guy on that story, and then he's hiding the most important part of it, that there's a server at that house. Imran Awan is basically off the hook. That story is over. When Biden became president, the first thing they did was give him $850,000. Also, remember, they let him off. He did not get prosecuted. What happened to him? It was some incredibly light sentence. I remember Luke Rosiak came on the show and said 14 years and covering trials in that Washington, D.C. court. He's never seen anything so ridiculous as that. But, George was all over it. All over the story, such that people watching would think he was an expert in Imran Awan and would be likely to trust anything he said about him. So back to Tulsi Gabbard. So she's pointing to this document that was released on January 6th, 2017. And that thing is basically saying, yeah, Russia ordered this operation kind of like a pizza. Now, what's interesting is if people are following me on X, you will see that I just reposted, you get on there at JG_CSTT. I just reposted this email from Benjamin Wittes to James Comey, December 28th, 2016. What's important about this, and I know it's detailed, but yeah, Laurel Everly, that was the woman's name. Thank you. Back to this email. It's from Ben Wittes to James Comey, Reinhold Niebuhr. He's already admitted that he is Reinhold Niebuhr. Of course, now we have a siren. But he's saying, hey, I've got this document. It's a cover sheet from a dossier. It's prepared by this private British intelligence firm. It's being investigated by Shane Harris at the Wall Street Journal at the very least. And someone says Whitney Webb is living in Chile. I don't know. I heard her on the internet. But this email is important because it is sent December 28th. And if you go through the whole Tulsi Gabbard timeline there, she's talking about, it's after the election. These guys don't care about the Steele dossier anymore. That was a campaign, oppo research thing designed to get people to not vote for Trump. It had obviously failed by the time Trump won, and also the people who created it knew it was fake nonsense. So it failed, and they, this is the crazy thing about the Devin Nunes memo. It's so super focused on that Steele dossier and how that was used as a component of getting this FISA court approval, but that's not the meat in this steak sandwich. I don't even think it's the bread. It's the yoga mat filler in the Subway sandwich bread. And it has bothered me for a very long time that Devin Nunes has been so focused on it. I initially, I guess, started looking at Devin Nunes because I couldn't believe that he was using Stephen Biss as his attorney. And so it initially made me think either this guy is an idiot and doesn't realize that Stephen Biss is crooked as shit and also a moron and a terrible attorney, which just doesn't make sense. You're Devin Nunes. His family owns that dairy ranch. He has a lot of money, plus he's in Congress. There's a lot of guys hanging out there. He's got a lot of money. He's in Congress. That's a guy who could pretty much get any attorney that he would need. Why is he using Stephen Biss? Why is Dan Bongino using Stephen Biss? He probably has even more money. I don't know. But he's got millions of dollars from his podcast, his Fox News show. Why the hell is he using Stephen Biss? And by the way, they're all using Stephen Biss to sue and torment journalists who are putting out stories that they say are false, but amazingly, their lawsuits seem to almost always fail. So, in my view, Stephen Biss is a lawfare practitioner who just sues people to make it difficult for them to do business. Look at me. I've been getting sued for 8 years. It occupies so much of my time and so much of my life. People might think I talk about it a lot, but I don't think people really appreciate what an incredible burden it's been. How much money, how many resources, how much of my mind space it's occupied. Admitting this kind of hands a bit of a victory to George's psychopath brother, but he knows. He knows how much time this is taking. There are millions of dollars. It's not just him. It's multiple law firms now. Nina Jankowicz has been after me for tens of thousands of dollars of legal fees that luckily she hasn't been able to win. She has 2 separate law firms after me. The Emmys have a big law firm after me. Chris Boozy, Ballard Spahr. These are 125-year-old white shoe, as it were, law firms with, dozens and even hundreds. Elon Musk has a law firm. Now, it's true, I brought the lawsuit against Elon Musk, but I got choked. I went there to tell him that the FBI was embedded in Twitter. I thought I was helping, and I got choked. By the way, that reminds me of another limited hangout that we're going to talk about, but let's look at this video now. Mike Benz. Did people see when I went up to Madison Square Garden for the Trump rally? And minor fine. Did not prosecute him for anything. I remember that, Tomcat. That's what I mean. He just got off very easy. And I think George was there making sure that happened. But let's talk about limited hangout. Let's talk about Mike Benz. He tells you, ooh, I'm super interested in internet censorship and blah, blah, blah. And obviously he spoke a lot about the Twitter censorship. I didn't realize this at the time, and I don't even know who he was at the time. But if you see the video of me, that's so noisy over there. If you see the video of me sitting at the Twitter Files Congress hearing, Mike Benz is right in front of me. If I had known who he was, I would have spoken to him there, but I don't think it would have made a difference because I think he, Matt Taibbi, Michael Schellenberger, and the entire Twitter files release is itself a limited hangout intended to cover up what I was exposing. And what I was exposing specifically was the involvement of Valerie Caproni and Adam Sharp at the behest of Barack Obama. That they were the ones who installed the FBI into Twitter and converted Twitter from a social media platform into a spying platform, to spy on all of us, to read your DMs, to track where you are by GPS. You agree to all of that when you click on the terms of service. And so if the FBI, even if they're just looking at what you tweet and nothing else, and they say, take this person down, he's tweeting stuff about us taking over Twitter, we don't want that. But so Mike Benz is there at the public event at Madison Square Garden, and this happened. Mike Benz, Mike Cyber Benz,
Yo, hey.
Jason Goodman.
How you doing?
Dude, I gotta get you to look at the Twitter coup. Adam Sharp, Valerie Caproni, the FBI General Counsel, under Barack Obama's guidance, they put the FBI into Twitter. I've been trying to send you this for like 2 years. James Baker had me strangled outside of Twitter on November 1st when I went there to tell, yes. I have an email that was sent to James Baker that said, hey, Jason Goodman's trying to communicate with Elon Musk. Then I'm standing outside there November 1st with my Twitter coup report, and I get choked. James Baker wasn't fired until 5 weeks later. So that whole conversation goes on for much longer, but I just wanted to play the first 30 seconds of it for everybody because, you know, I'm basically, for the next 2 or 3 minutes that I talked to him, trying to convince Mike Benz to be interested in this. I say to him, I've been trying to give you this information for 2 years, and he's standing there like, I don't know, can you do a 5-minute summary? It's like, how does that 30-second statement not pique this guy's interest where I'm saying I went to Twitter and the FBI had me strangled? By the way, the email to legal@twitter.com was sent by George's brother. Okay, so people were like, oh, you're just jealous. This is just an internet beef. You're upset that George has a bigger YouTube channel or whatever. None of that is correct. I would have been super delighted to never speak to George again after August or whatever it was when I kicked him off the show in 2017. It's his asshole brother who's sued me 20 some odd times. And they've, evidence I've seen and that the FBI and the Detroit police agree with seems to show that they filed forged documents in the district court in the Eastern District of Michigan. Who would do that over an internet beef? That doesn't make any sense. That sounds like somebody who the FBI has granted authority to engage in otherwise illegal activity might do. Because if the FBI tells you, do this, we're not going to prosecute you for it. In fact, we're going to pay you to do it. I wonder what she thinks of the assassination attempt. Then you might do it. But a normal, sensible person would think, oh, I'm not going to file forged documents in the district court because it's a felony. And if I get caught, I could go to jail for 14 years. And then, even though you might think you're so smart and Jason is so stupid he's never going to figure it out, after I figure it out and start telling the court all about it, why would you bring another case in that court about all of that evidence? It only makes sense if you know the FBI isn't going to prosecute you for it and you want Jason to shut up once and for all by getting the judge in Michigan to give you a ruling on it so that from then on into perpetuity, you could say res judicata, this has already been adjudicated and Jason can't bring it up again. See, I think what he's worried about is it's possible that not every single judge in the U.S. District Court system is captured by this, and if I get this information in front of the right judge, it could expose what they're doing. That's the only way that makes sense. So is George for real? And he and I are just internet rivals who I'm jealous of? Or is he an FBI adjacent media stooge who everything he says is a limited hangout. He's designed to intrigue people and wind you up with narratives that ultimately lead to the wrong answer. I think that's what it is. But anyway, so, and by the way, there's lots of evidence that they work with and for Ben Wittes and Chris Boozy. Because when I succeeded in getting Chris Boozy right up to the edge of default, I had a clerk about to sign a notice of default judgment or something like that. George's brother sends a tweet to Nina Jankowicz and Ben Wittes, and the next day Ballard Spahr shows up to defend Boozy. Isn't that weird? Why would Ballard Spahr, a super expensive law firm that generally does not get into representing individuals at all, why would they represent a loser like Boozy? Doesn't make sense to me. But they did after George's brother emailed, and he also was emailing legal at twitter.com. Mike Benz doesn't care. Why didn't he say something like, hey, I'm about to go inside Madison Square Garden with Jack Posobiec. Oh, and did people notice, what's her name? Nicole Siebert, that German girl with too much makeup. She's right behind him the whole time. I didn't know who that was at the time, but she's looking at me. I don't know why. Maybe she didn't want to be on video. Maybe she knows who I am. Maybe she knows she's there doing something shady. I don't know, but she's looking at me. She tweets a lot in support of Elon Musk, the very same guy who dodged service like a hobo for 6 months in my lawsuit, Goodman versus the City of New York, where I got strangled in front of Twitter, trying to tell him that Barack Obama used Valerie Caproni and Adam Sharp to install the FBI into Twitter, something they would expose through the limited hangout, the Twitter files, 5 weeks later. That was November 1st, 2022. Professional idiot Matt Taibbi starts putting out the Twitter files the first or second week of December, like 5 weeks later. And I call Matt Taibbi a professional idiot because remember, he did that event in Brooklyn where Ezra Frisch showed up. And he was like, oh, no, I want to have this conversation with Ezra Frisch about nonsense, where he's, putting out complete nonsense COVID talking points about, just false statistics. People have seen that video. We see Ezra Frisch all over the place agitating at these things. So, look, obviously Ezra Frisch is not an FBI agent. This has become a major thing in the Epstein thing as well. Is he an asset? Is he an agent? This is what Mike Benz wants to tie people up with. He's very knowledgeable in all of this terminology and the legal designations of an agent versus an asset versus a cooperative, the different things that he says. I'm just saying these people are not who they present themselves as, and they're working against us. So Tulsi Gabbard is talking about this document that they put out on January 6th. So on January 6th, all those guys would have seen this email from Ben Wittes where he's saying, hey, I have this weird dossier, and he's talking about it's coming from a private British here. This is from the Lawfare blog, also controlled by Ben Wittes. This is written by a guy named Matt Tate. It's the Brookings Institute. Matt Tate is a former GCHQ former. He's like 32 or 33 at the time this is happening. And he's talking about that time that he almost got recruited by the Russians to be involved in this whole Peter Smith operation, GOP operatives, seeking emails. Peter W. Smith. This was the thing that Shane Harris called Charles about the very first day when I met Charles at that meeting that was set up by George. And our buddy Matt Tate tells us that this document that was emailed to Comey, it's all about this opposition research, Smith's group here that is going against Hillary, and this is the demonstrative pedagogical summary to be developed and released prior to November 8th and dated September 7th. Isn't that just chock-a-block full of complicated details? Dated September 7th. Remember, Charles explained to us that they wanted that to be burned into your brain because the election was November 8th, and they have this 60-day rule. So by this being 61 days, do people see how this is lawyerly lawfare bullshit? They're trying to cover those bases so that if this all gets into court, oh no, that was 61 days, so they had a predicate to open an investigation, and it was outside the 60-day rule. They didn't break any rules because they're thinking like lawyers. They're thinking, oh, you know what? If they do this 59 days before the election, we'll go into court and argue, oh, this was done in violation of long-standing practice. Now they can tell the public and the court, no, this was well within policy, well within precedent, blah, 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 all that kind of crap. But is that the way that normal people write documents? And by the way, I think I've shown this before, but it's worth looking at again. I have this document, or a portion of it, the demonstrative, pedagogical, and by the way, Charles said, Peter Smith never speaks like that. Charles worked with Peter Smith. He was introduced to him by Tom Lipscomb, who was another guy that I don't trust. Tom Lipscomb was the editor of the New York Times book review. So he's the guy who gets to say, this book is a New York Times bestseller, or not that he, maybe he is, I don't know, but he certainly can review it and say, you should read this. He could say, oh, you know, this book about TWA 800 is great, and this other one over here is a conspiracy theory, and that's going to sway a lot of people's minds in the same way that Tucker Carlson saying Whitney Webb stole information. It's going to sway people. Certain number of people won't even remember that specific statement. It will just lock into their brain that Tucker Carlson, who they trust, said something negative about Whitney Webb. Now, when Whitney Webb shows up elsewhere, they'll be like, oh, that's that conspiracy theorist person, isn't it? So this is how a limited hangout works. It's not 80-90 or 80-20 or 90-10. You know, a lot of people try to simplify the explanation like that. I don't want to do that. I want to help people understand how insidious this is. Because it's not like, oh, I'll just listen to Joe. And by the way, listen to whoever you want to listen to. But a lot of people think, oh, well, you know, I can figure out which parts of this are true and which parts of this are false, and I'll use my discernment. I mean, you should definitely use your discernment. I just want you to understand exactly what's going on, in my opinion. And you might disagree with everything I'm saying. You're free to do that. I do hope if you value what I'm saying, you'll become a sponsor on subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, or on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. If you're already a sponsor and you realize how valuable this is, you can make an additional one-time sponsorship payment on paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. And if you're watching on X at JG_CSTT, please share this video so that more people can see it, and also become a subscriber on X. You'll get sponsor exclusive content, and you'll make it possible for me to continue giving this information to everybody, because what they're trying to do with all these lawsuits and removing me from social media is to make it impossible for me to earn a living doing this, while they amplify the bullshit from people like George and other people who are limited hangouts, misleading people, in my opinion. So Matt Tate writes that whole thing there where he's talking about this pedagogical summary, which is supposed to be this document from Peter Smith. Now here it is. This was sent to me by one of the people listed in here. People can guess who that is, obviously, but it's limited, you know. I don't have the full document, and it's this low resolution thing. Well, somebody put this out on Twitter is how I got it. Charles had never seen it. Charles didn't get this. Charles's name is on there, but it's saying Trump campaign and coordination. You know, this is put together by people who are trying to make it look like Charles is involved with this, when in fact he's not, right? So it's supposed to be written by Peter Smith, but I allege, see, you got Jerry Corsi on there. They tried to jam him up with this. James O'Keefe. There's Tom Lipscomb. He's the guy who introduced Charles to Peter Smith. Look, 833 in the, maybe that's just a coincidence, but I don't know. He's dead, so that phone number won't get to him anymore. But this is the summary of relevant articles, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to use this to demonstrate that these are all the enemies of Hillary Clinton, and they're assembling this document, and Charles is associated with this document. His name is in this document, and Ben Wittes sends this to James Comey saying, here is a document that I got, and these are all the people that are trying to communicate with Russia on Trump's behalf to get this espionage material, these hacked emails. And remember how they jammed up Julian Assange? They said, he participated in hacking or whatever. They charged him with the Espionage Act, even though he should have been protected by New York Times v. Sullivan. Again, that's my opinion, and I'm not an attorney, but this is the evidence that I see. And so sure enough, sometime after that document is presented and Wittes sends that email to Comey, Charles gets jammed up by the FBI. They tried to, at least. We have the redacted 302 right here. Look at this. What's the date here? December. This already happened in 2018 or 19, but this was later when they were investigating. A lot of it is redacted, but they're saying that it's a voluntary interview. Charles says he's not aware of this document. They provided him with a copy of this pedagogical summary to be, advanced on November 7th or whatever the hell that thing said. Charles said he was not aware of it. He had never seen the document. They're in New York at the Roosevelt Hotel, of all places. It's the interview of Charles Ortel, and they're asking him about Roger Stone. And he was shown this email where he's taught. Charles sent an email on July 25th, 2016, in which he says somebody should go to the Ecuadorian embassy and interview Julian Assange. And Charles remembers sending that email. He said he was watching the news and Julian Assange said, I have information that'll put Hillary Clinton in jail. So they're asking him about it, and he's referring back to this Ecuador email, and he was not aware of any action that Roger Stone took as a result of that email. Then they're asking him about Jerome Corsi, because we learned later from other testimony, from other FBI entrapment, that they had said, hey, Jerry Corsi, after Charles sends you this email, that's the end of what they're saying to Charles. All the rest of it is redacted. Asking if he had advanced knowledge of what WikiLeaks was going to do, and I'm sure he said no. It'd be nice to know if we could get an unredacted copy of this now that Tulsi Gabbard is in charge, but that's everything there from the Charles 302. But we know from other FBI chicanery that they were asking Jerry Corsi, remember during one of the Larry Klayman citizen grand juries, we had Jerry Corsi testifying at a grand jury indictment of Robert Mueller, where Corsi explained that they were asking him about a phone call that Corsi made to Ted Malloch after receiving that email from Charles. And I think Charles might have even said, hey, call Ted Malloch, because they all know Ted Malloch. He's an American guy. He's an economist or something like that. And I think he's like a professor at Oxford or University of London or something like that. He's an American guy who's an economy professor, economics professor over there in London. And they said, well, maybe that guy who's kind of our buddy can go talk to Julian Assange, just because, Charles was trying to find any information that anybody had about Hillary Clinton and this illegal use of the Clinton Foundation. Saw it on the news. He's not doing anything wrong, and that's proven out by the fact that the FBI couldn't do anything to Charles. See, the thing that Peter Smith was trying to do, he was like, hey, Charles, I'm talking to these hackers in Russia who have 33,000 stolen emails from Hillary Clinton. How many times have we heard that referenced? 33,000 stolen emails. That's fake bullshit as well. A limited hangout. Look, is this a new restaurant? There was almost certainly many more than 33,000 emails. over the years, this has been various different restaurants. This is Torch and Crown. Sounds like an NYU thing. But 33,000, is this Harajuku, girls? 33,000, this is pretty empty given what a nice day it is. Brewing company, Torch and Crown. Maybe it's too early for beer. No, it's 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. 33,000 emails is also almost certainly a limited hangout. There had to be a lot more than 33,000 emails, but what I allege was happening is, and Chris Boozy was involved in this bullshit too. He was tweeting in response to Shane Harris's tweets about Peter Smith. This is part of the way I got entangled with Chris Boozy, because I was asking all kinds of questions on Twitter of Ben Wittes, and he sicked Chris Boozy on me to destroy my Twitter account, and it worked. So you see, I don't think this is coincidence. It's interesting to me. Ben Wittes is another guy who's probably making 7 figures stealing money, I allege, from nonprofits as a fellow at the whatever the hell he is, the director of the Lawfare Institute, and he's running the Lawfare blog, and this guy's got all kinds of ways to make money. Why does he care what I'm talking about? A million people say all kinds of stupid shit to me on Twitter. I don't care who they are or what they say. It's weird to me when people who make millions or even billions in the case of Palmer Luckey, why do they care what I say on Twitter unless it risks something important that they're doing? I think that's what was happening. And Ben Wittes said, oh, let's get Chris Boozy, who is one of these contract antagonists like George's fucking asshole brother. Let's get him to antagonize Jason, get that Twitter account to go away. And they did. And then it's interesting that when I get Boozy into court, that's when George's brother lets Nina Jankowicz and Ben Wittes know, hey, your asset, your associate, your contract antagonist, whatever the hell this idiot is, he's got a problem. Get some big, powerful law firm on there. Let's get Ballard Spahr to fight Jason in court. That's lawfare. There's no way Chris Boozy is getting Ballard Spahr to represent him. That is implausible on its face. And frankly, the court should realize that. But see, there's elements, there's judges, they know how this all works. I allege. They let it happen. They make it happen. This is a nasty lawn. Muddy. Mostly dead grass. Okay, so we've got this whole pedagogical summary of whatever the hell he's talking about there, where they're trying to jam up Charles. People hate New York, but like seeing me walk around. Thank you. Yes, please repost the stream so we can get more people watching this, because it's important that everybody understands this. I'm not just saying that George Webb is a limited hangout and that Devin Nunes is a limited hangout and that Mike Benz is a limited hangout because I don't like those guys. I started out actually liking each of them. And it was only when I discovered that they seemed to be lying, in my opinion, that I started saying, hey, these guys are limited hangouts. Because I think they're trying to hurt you. And who can hurt you more than somebody who pretends to be a friend or an ally and gets right up close to you and then at the precise moment stabs you through the heart? That's what I allege my attorney in the Television Academy lawsuit, the Emmys lawsuit, that's what my attorney did. They tricked me in that lawsuit because you see, that is what these guys all rely upon, is deception. They can't win in a straight game. They have to cheat. So let's see, what else do we have here? The pedagogical summary and Charles's 302, exactly. Oh yeah, back to Mike Benz. I was watching this morning, he was talking to somebody on a Bitcoin channel. I don't really know what this channel is, but he's making the rounds. I mean, it seems to me they want to establish this guy as a huge expert, right? Do we really believe that the CIA or the State Department or whoever is just going to allow that guy to go around telling you all their secrets? Why is it that people like Nina and Chris Boozy and George's fucking asshole brother, why do they pop up to destroy every YouTube channel I create, sue me every other week, file bogus restraining orders against me, and do everything under the damn sun to stop me? But yet Mike Benz can go all over everywhere talking about this stuff that's going to shut down the CIA, and they don't do a damn thing to him. Doesn't that seem weird to anybody else but me? So here's Mike Benz talking about limited hangouts.
What you may, it's going to sound like a strange thing to say, but I think you may get a kind of form of limited hangout that at least is a partial admission with enough pressure.
Isn't that a funny thing to say? You might get some form of a limited hangout. Might take the form of a bald douchebag talking to you on a Bitcoin channel. I don't know. Ha ha ha. So it's very weird to me that Mike Benz wouldn't have said to me outside that. First of all, it was weird to me that sending him all this stuff about the FBI infiltration of Twitter just didn't get his attention at all. That was strange. Then when I walked right up to him and explained it to him in 30 seconds that I went to Twitter and got strangled and that somebody was emailing the FBI about me, that he didn't say, wait a minute, run that by me again? You were emailing the FBI or whatever? And he didn't say, okay, send me a DM on Twitter. I'm about to go inside and get hired by Elon Musk to be a limited hangout. Because what I'm trying to say is X is a limited hangout. You know, they've got us convinced, I think. Let me rephrase this. Let's consider this possibility. What if X is a limited hangout? That they decided, hey, Twitter is dead. It's been figured out. We kicked everybody off. You know, they're pulling the ripcord there. I don't think they really wanted to do that. I think they wanted to keep controlling it and see what everybody was tweeting and just quietly eliminate people like me who they didn't like. I don't think they necessarily planned to eliminate Trump and get questioned by the Senate and all that. Remember, Jack Dorsey was being questioned by the Senate about kicking off Trump, and he said, oh, it was a mistake. We shouldn't have done it. So I don't know if all of that was part of their plan, but I think they needed to reset Twitter. And so they said, okay, let's get somebody who everybody admires and everybody thinks is a tech bro and, 16 different women want to have his babies and he's the richest guy in the world. So people who like money thinks he's cool for that. People who like memes thinks he's cool for that. If you like satellite internet, which I admittedly do, people think he's cool for that. You know, he's one of these guys who's built up. I don't know if Elon Musk is for real. Pretty good. Jordan, right? Remember that guy? He did a lot of interesting stuff with the guitar. Anyway, I don't know if Elon Musk is for real, but let's consider the possibility that he's one of these intelligence cutouts, that they want to get everybody off of oil onto electric. They want to collapse the United States, which has tons of oil and natural gas, and get everybody onto electric motors and stuff from China, destroy the economy, sell it out to China, destroy all the businesses in New York City, sell those out to China, make everything Chinese, and transfer the power. You know, it goes back to this idea that World War I, World War II, that consolidated economic and military power in the United States. The United States has arguably controlled the world for the past 80 years, hegemonic you know. And now collapse all this, first with COVID, then with all this other crap, you know, Obama being a communist and getting rid of constitutional republic. Tulsi Gabbard kept calling it a democratic republic. Maybe there's some nuance there that I'm ignorant of, but I thought it was a constitutional republic. I don't know. Is that the same or different? By the way, Charles will be on later tonight. This is not in lieu of Charles. This is in addition to. I wanted to tell everybody about this because I was reading these Tulsi Gabbard documents. Oh no, did the video end? Did I disconnect somehow? No, it's still going. I wanted to tell everybody about this because I was reading those Tulsi Gabbard documents. Granddad was the godfather of technocracy. Who? Elon Musk's grandfather? Yeah, Benz is way too good to be true. Oh, Scott Adams is wondering the same. I really do like Scott Adams, even before he was on Twitter. I like Dilbert, it's funny. He was asking for ideas for Dilbert. I told him to have Dogbert testify in front of Congress. I don't know if he took that idea. Brain chip, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. There's a lot of stuff about Elon Musk that seems too good to be true. Like running any one of these companies would seem to be really taxing to an individual, even of intense intelligence and capability. Running 5, I mean, Tesla, SpaceX, XAI, what's the brain thing called? Neuralink, Boring. Maybe the Boring company's not that big a deal. You could delegate that tunnel company to somebody. But I mean, of course it is. You're the CEO of something like that. You're going to be going to meetings and dealing with financial, I don't know. I mean, even running a company with 7 people and nowhere near the assets of any of that took all of my time. Not that I'm a measure of anything, but I think anybody who's ever run their own company has to recognize that it just seems, everyone says, oh, he's superhuman. Okay, but at a certain point, I mean, maybe you do it with 2 companies. Also, what happened now that Linda Yaccarino left? Did we ever hear about that? Why that happened, or who is taking over, or any of that kind of stuff? Does anybody know? So let's say they need to reset Twitter. They bring in Elon Musk. Here's the other thing. We spoke about how we never really got an explanation as to why Al-Walid went from no, Elon Musk can't have it to okay, you can have it. Al-Walid was buddies with Jamal Khashoggi, who was the nephew of Adnan Khashoggi. And I mean, this goes back to all of the Epstein stuff. And also the other thing with Mike Benz is he's a little bit too over the top with, oh, you know, there's nothing unusual about what Epstein was doing with human trafficking. That was just about having parties to juice deals. If I have to listen to that bald schmuck say juice deals one more time, I'm going to smash a phone. He's so annoying with that. First of all, I mean, you don't need, let me put it to you this way. When I had a house in Hollywood and everybody knew I was working on Spider-Man, somehow hot actresses and models showed up at my party. These girls know when stuff is going on and money is around and people who, they just show up. And I'm not talking about underage girls. I'm talking about, you know, hot actresses and models who, billionaire people who are involved with deals and having yachts and houses, and they don't need Jeffrey Epstein to get women around. I think anybody like that can have a ton of women around all the time. I think. So Epstein was obviously doing something. The other thing that he said that was stupid, he's like, oh, there's no evidence of blackmail. So what the hell are you talking about? They have boxes of DVD-Rs that guy Riccari, Detective Riccari, who died at 52, uploaded video to John Mark Dugan's server and then mysteriously died. That guy was the Palm Beach County Police, not the FBI, not the CIA. He was investigating. He had the evidence of blackmail, it seems. and then he mysteriously died. So why is Mike Benz so adamant that there's no evidence of blackmail? His explanation is so stupid. He says, oh, why hasn't somebody come out? You'd write a $5 or $10 million book saying, I was getting blackmailed by Jeffrey Epstein. It's like, listen, moron, they're obviously blackmailing them for the most horrendous things you could imagine that they don't want anybody in the world to know about. They're not writing a book about it. What does he think blackmail is? Somebody knows something that the person doesn't want anybody to know. They're not going to go write a book about it. They're going to be delighted that Jeffrey Epstein is dead. And by the way, if he's not dead, maybe they know that too. And Epstein could say, okay, now you can't sue me because the world thinks I'm dead, but hey, a package might show up at the New York Times with this video of you doing God knows what. So he could still be blackmailing people, including Mike Benz. For all I know, I have no evidence that he is. I'm just saying, it's an incredibly stupid explanation from Mike Benz. And it's another one of these things, like, why is he so adamantly on that angle? And that seems to be part of the smearing of Whitney Webb. I haven't read that Whitney Webb book. I think Whitney Webb doesn't like me. We've communicated maybe once, and I just got the impression that she didn't like me. I don't know why. Maybe because a lot of people associate me with George Webb. And I think that was part of what he was trying to do as well. Act like a jackass and associate himself with certain people. And then everybody thinks that person is a jackass. What is this? Got to be curled. What do we have here? Big line to be heated up. Yeah, it's hot. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on here. For whoever you want to be. Is it hair curling? Based on the line, it seems like it must be. What are you guys waiting for?
This pop-up.
What is it?
They got like goodie bags.
Flexible
products.
curl foam.
What?
Hair products?
Yeah, basically.
Hair products. Okay, cool.
They got like free stuff.
Free stuff. All right, enjoy it. You got to be curled. Oh yeah, I can see it's hair care products. Wow, who would have thought such a line for hair care products? All right, I mean, I could have probably gotten some interesting interviews from those people, but I'm not, I got enough on my hands. So there you go. I don't know what the hell Mike Benz is doing, but it seems to me, look, it's my opinion that they're never going to tell us about what Jeffrey Epstein was doing because it goes directly to the heart of the absolute way that the United States intelligence apparatus has worked. And some of them are kind of saying this, you know, how it intertwines with organized crime, and that basically, that's it. That just we're like a criminal organization, and they don't want people to know that because so many people would be so shocked that it would kind of ruin everything. And also, we have ongoing intelligence action happening now. So as someone who is the President of the United States, and by the way, I'm not trying to make an excuse for Donald Trump. I think he handled it terribly. The way he acted certainly made people think he was guilty. And I don't think he's guilty of doing things with underage girls. These dumb pictures that they have coming out. The reason I say that is because it seems like Donald Trump had all of the fully adult aged Playboy models and everything anybody like that would ever want. It just seems like a smear. And by the way, isn't that what they say about everybody? That's what George and his idiot brother and Chris Boozy tried to say about me, and without evidence. They just say that stuff so that anybody hears it, and some number of people will believe that. So, I mean, the best they can do is come up with stupid pencil drawings that are attributed to Donald Trump. It's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. Think about how bogged down we are with ridiculousness. I'm sure I've said this on the show before. Years and years ago, I was invited to a corporate event from Apple Computer on board the Intrepid aircraft carrier museum over there on the west side. And I think it was built in 1926 or 1936 or something like that. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, they didn't have computers. They didn't have, you know, all kinds of advanced robotic cranes or whatever the hell they use to build things like that today. And yet they were able to build this gigantic seafaring vessel that could launch airplanes and have hundreds of people on here eating food, having electricity. Think of that. The technological and the engineering achievement of doing that long ago. And they did it to kill people. Could you imagine if we didn't have so many people who were expending so much energy to do terrible things to other people, the way George and his brother have to me over the last 8 years, and the way Obama and all of his so-called intelligence people have done to Trump. And I'll tell you, Michael Caputo, that lawyer, he's on Twitter talking about Ben Rhodes. I've been noticing that lately. He had this picture of his adorable daughters. It's so sad. It's these two super cute little kids, and Caputo is telling this whole story about how he was one of the guys. I think he was Roger Stone's lawyer or something, but he got all jammed up in Russiagate, that whole business they were trying to get Charles and Corsi and Roger Stone with. This guy got dragged in, and he had to sell his house. He's talking about how these two little girls, I guess they're 8 years older now, and he said they're never going to be the same. I guess they had to maybe go to a different school or lose their house, and their father was, I mean, you know, think of that. Those are two innocent little girls, didn't know anything about any of this, and the people doing it, they don't care. Making up stories, hurting people. Think about what it's done to my life over the past 8 years if I didn't have to go to court to crap around with stupid Nina, that evil bitch. She's a horrible piece of shit. And she's like, oh, Jason said this or that about my member of my family. It's like, look, fuck you, you bitch. You're trying to destroy everybody's First Amendment. Who cares about you? You're evil. And these are evil people doing evil things. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say about the limited hangout. I don't know if we'll get justice. I hope we will. There's a lot of people who are saying, oh no, never gonna happen. I don't know. I guess maybe the people who are sitting in jail from January 6th, they could have said, oh, nothing's gonna happen, we're just gonna be in jail for 20 years. But something happened. They got pardoned. I think that was pretty good. There might be a lot of people who might have thought that that was not gonna happen, and it happened. So maybe something good will happen. Charles always has a positive outlook on this kind of stuff, so make sure you tune in later. And if you're watching on X at JG_CSTT, subscribe. Become a subscriber. It's only $5 a month. And even if you're only watching the free shows, it helps a lot. I wouldn't be able to continue doing this if it wasn't for the individual viewer sponsors who have supported the show. I really do appreciate everybody who's done that over the years. But you know, when they try to clip me off of platforms like Odyssey and they terminate my big YouTube channel, it makes it so difficult. So, you know, you can sponsor on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, get access to all the sponsor exclusive content on there. You can make a one-time sponsorship payment on paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. Here's another one of these Fisker Oceans. I think they couldn't sell them, so they gave them to a taxi company, and now it's not Uber, it's that. It's Gree, NYC, some kind of taxi, I don't know. I bet you that's a difficult car to get service, but you can also sponsor the show on subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Any more chat comments? Anybody want to say anything? Thanks for tuning in and watching, everybody. Yeah, exactly. Caputo had to uproot his family and went bankrupt. Right. That's what I was reading. Tom, that's a good comment. But I mean, that's what I'm saying. Why would they allow Mike Benz to spew all this information? I just don't think that anybody who tells you they're a former FBI, former CIA, former anything, I just don't think the CIA is letting these people say anything other than exactly what they want you to know. I think the only former CIA and FBI people are either in a wood box underground or in a concrete box in jail, not on YouTube or X telling you anything. That's what I think. I could be wrong. I don't know. People might say the same thing about me. I don't know why I'm going broke and having my YouTube channels canceled every time they reach 10,000. That's a weird thing.